Welcome to KetoMealsAndRecipes.com. Today we're going to have a little bit of fun and make some chocolate cutout cookies. And because it's almost Christmas, I'm going to make snowflake cutout cookies, which I will decorate with white chocolate. But if you prefer, you can use my sugar-free royal icing instead of the chocolate. I'll explain more about the white chocolate and how to prepare it a little later, so keep watching. Today, however, I'm going to use my white chocolate for decorating my cookies. And if you want some more cutout cookie ideas, you could also watch my keto sugar cookies, which I made for Christmas a couple years ago, or one of my other favorites, which were also fun to make, my sugar-free gingerbread men, or in my case, people cookies. Now here's the macronutrient information so you can decide how many of these delicious cookies you can enjoy. The macronutrient ratio for my chocolate cutout cookies is 3.8 to 1, with 3.8 grams of total carbs, 1.2 grams of soluble fiber, 1 gram of insoluble fiber, resulting in only 1.6 grams of net carbs per rather large cookie. However, I do want you to note this does not include any icing or decorations that you're putting on the cookie. It's just for the cookie. Now, before beginning, first assemble and weigh out all of your ingredients. Then place a fine mesh sieve over your deep mixing bowl, and to the sieve add your almond flour, one of lupin flour, which is what I'm going to be using because of the higher protein content and because my son doesn't like coconut flour. Or you could also use coconut flour in place of the lupin flour, in which case the cookies will taste a little bit sweeter. Add your Dutch processed cocoa powder, then add the salt, which I also ground to a very fine powder, and this helps to distribute through the recipe much better. And you may have noticed that in most of my bakings I do use glucomannan powder, which is also called konjac root powder. And because by using glucomannan, it improves the texture and structural stability of whatever you're baking, in this case, the cookies. And of course, we have to use a little bit of gluten-free baking powder. And lastly, I also add in the instant coffee powder, and this is to enhance the chocolate flavor. After I've added all the dry ingredients to the sieve, just whisk or use your hand to help sift everything through. And by sifting, you'll get rid of any clumps in the flour or other ingredients. When you're all done sifting, if there are any large pieces of flour or anything else left in the sieve, just discard it. You don't need that. And then just set this bowl with the dry ingredients aside for a moment. For the next part, you could use a hand mixer, or as I'm going to do, I'm going to use my stand mixer, and I'm going to put on the paddle attachment. And then to the mixing bowl, add my room temperature butter and beat it for 1 to 2 minutes. What I want is for the butter to be very soft and pale yellow. And before adding any more ingredients, please don't forget to scrape the bowl and loosen the butter from the side of the bowl. And before adding the eggs to the bowl, I like to whisk them and then add half at a time while you're continuing to blend at medium speed. What you're doing here is to combine the eggs and the butter as best as you can. Then add the rest of the whisked eggs. You'll notice that the mixture in your bowl is looking quite curdled, but don't worry. This is expected because the butter fat and the egg yolks are a bit fussy and they don't always like to cooperate with each other and combine. And that's especially true if one or the other is a little bit cooler. And now it's time to add the vanilla extract. Or if you want to change up the flavor, you could substitute the vanilla for rum extract or even orange extract. The next thing I'm going to add is the powdered sweetener and blend it at low speed for about a minute. Having done that, the next thing I'm going to do is continue beating at low speed and add about 1 cup of the flour mixture into the bowl as I continue to mix. Adding the ingredients slowly while it continues to mix, it helps the dry ingredients to better integrate with the butter mixture. And then just repeat until you've added all of your flour mixture. And at least once or twice, stop, scrape the side and bottom of the bowl to reintegrate all the ingredients. And when you're done, you'll notice that you have a smooth, creamy cookie dough that's very sticky. So before rolling out the cookie dough, place a long sheet of parchment paper on your work surface, and then put the cookie dough on top of the parchment paper. Here's a little trick I'd like to share with you because it guarantees that your cookies will be the right thickness every time. I like to position 2 new painter sticks, one on either side, as a guide. These sticks are about 1/4 inch or 0.6 centimeter thick, the perfect thickness for these cookies. If you don't have painter sticks, another thing you could use are chopsticks. And these wood guides are placed at a distance apart so that the rolling pin will glide over the surface of the sticks. And put a sheet of parchment paper, or as I'm using, cling wrap, on top. Now, using your rolling pin, go back and forth over the dough until the dough is the same thickness as your guide sticks. The dough's not quite ready, so remove the cling wrap or top parchment and also remove the painter sticks. The dough is very soft and sticky, so take a hold of the bottom parchment and slide it with the cookie dough onto your cookie sheet. One is to transfer the dough into your refrigerator for a minimum of 3 to 4 hours, or to put the dough in the freezer for about an hour. You really want the dough really firm, but what I actually do is I prefer to leave the dough uncovered in my refrigerator overnight. I find that the taste develops and the texture and firmness is just perfect, and it makes it much easier to work with. But just before getting my chilled cookie dough, I'm going to preheat my oven to 150 degrees Celsius or 300 degrees Fahrenheit. Having done that, it's time to get my chilled cookie dough. I'm really pleased with the texture of my cookie dough. It's chilled and quite firm. So I'm going to slide the parchment back onto my work surface. Oh yeah, and before I forget to tell you, place a fresh sheet of parchment onto your baking sheet. Then you can use your favorite cookie cutout shape, but today I have chosen to make my large size snowflake shapes. My snowflake cutouts came in 3 sizes. The small would make well over 24 cookies, but I like this middle size because it's nice and big and makes for a perfect sized treat. Because the dough is quite firm and cold, it's quite easy to just press your cookie shape into the dough and jiggle it ever so slightly. I would also recommend that you do all the cutout shapes before you start transferring. And before starting to transfer the cutouts onto your baking sheet, peel away any of the dough around the cutouts. If you use a butter knife, it makes it quite easy. And just gather up all this extra cookie dough and put it aside. There will be enough cookie dough left over from around the cutouts that you can re-roll it, if needed, re-chill it, and then make more cutouts. Now, to transfer the cookies, I would highly recommend you use a very thin metal spatula and carefully press down and slide it under the cookie so you don't distort the shape as you transfer the dough onto your cookie sheet. And as you place your cutouts on the baking sheet, remember to leave plenty of room between each of the shapes. But don't overcrowd the cookies because you want them to bake nice and evenly. When your cookie sheet is full, place the cookie sheet back into the refrigerator for about 30 to 60 minutes. You want the dough to re-chill and be quite cold. You don't want the cookies to expand and lose their shape. This is very important for best results. Okay, it's now time to bake the cookies, so place it in the middle position of your preheated oven and set your timer for 10 minutes. After 10 minutes, check for doneness, and if needed, bake for 2 minutes, no more than 2 minutes. After the maximum 12 minutes, remove the baked cookies from the oven. You will notice that the cookies might still look a little bit raw or soft in the center. That's okay. They'll harden as they cool. And then leave the cookies in the cookie sheet for about 10 minutes so that they come to room temperature before you transfer them. I'm going to use a spatula again to transfer the cookies from the cookie sheet onto my cooling rack. The next thing depends on you. You can either eat them in about an hour or 2 when they have reached room temperature, or if you're like me, I like to leave my cookies out on the counter overnight to air dry and harden up a bit. I find that texture is just perfect. And if you're happy with your cookies as they are, you can eat them naked. They look beautiful just as they are. However, since this is Christmas and I'm making these snowflake cookies as a treat for my family, I'm going to decorate them. Again, just as a reminder, you can use my sugar-free royal icing, or you can use some melted sugar-free white chocolate. I will add links for 2 different sugar-free white chocolate products in the description box, where you will also find the link for my sugar-free royal icing and the link for the written printable chocolate cookie cutout recipe. So please scroll to the description box below for the links. And this is how I prepare my white chocolate. First, I melt the white chocolate in a double boiler or a bain-marie. I prefer to do it this way rather than using a microwave. And once the chocolate is melted, give it a really good mix and then transfer it into a piping bag. And if you can, please get a decorating tip with a very small hole, which will make it much easier to control the chocolate as you pipe it. Alright, so now it's time to decorate, but for whatever reason, my hands are really shaky today. And I also find it really hard to lean over my equipment and decorate while I'm filming. So I'm going to start and show you how easy it is to decorate with white chocolate, but I have to admit that I will do most of the decorating off camera. And when I'm done, I will show you all the snowflake designs that I've made. And once I've decorated all of the chocolate cut-out cookies with the white chocolate, I put it into the fridge for about 10 minutes, just so that the chocolate hardens more quickly. But this chocolate will harden just at room temperature, unless it's too warm. Okay, now it's time to showcase my cookie designs. You of course can decorate however you like, be creative, and if you have a moment, share your creations by linking them to my Instagram. I think these cookies are just beautiful. No, they're not bakery perfect, but they look gorgeous anyway, and they're filled with love, which I'm sure your cookies will be when you share them with your friends and family. If you make these cookies ahead of time, there are several ways to store them. These cookies will keep well on your counter for several days, or if it's going to be more than 3 or 4 days, put them in an airtight, well-sealed container. You have to prevent any moisture from getting into the container, or else the cookies will soften up too much. Or you could make them ahead of time and freeze either the unbaked cookie cutouts or bake the cookies and then freeze them in an airtight container. They will keep for about 2 to 3 months, or until you need them for a special treat. I hope you enjoy this recipe. I would like to wish you and all of your loved ones a very Merry Christmas and all the best for a very happy and healthy New Year.